What if the world laughed the moment you stepped onto the stage? What if they said you didn't belong? That your name would never be remembered? But then, you ran. And by the time you crossed the finish line, you didn't just win the race. You changed everything. Welcome to Lane 4 Legend, a powerful story about a young black athlete who defied every expectation, silenced every critic, and broke a world record in front of those who doubted him most. This story isn't just about speed. It's about heart, courage, and the quiet kind of greatness that doesn't ask for permission. If you're ready for a story that will move you, challenge you, and leave you inspired, stick around. You don't want to miss a second of this. Before we dive in, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more stories that uplift and empower, and if this one speaks to you, drop a comment below and let us know which part hit you the hardest. Alright, let's begin Lane 4 Legend. Disclaimer. This story is a work of fiction. Any resemblance to actual persons, living or dead, or real events is purely coincidental. Lane 4 Legend was created solely for the purpose of delivering moral lessons, motivation, inspiration, and personal growth. It is intended to uplift, educate, and encourage viewers through storytelling. Viewer discretion is advised for those seeking factual or biographical content. In the heart of Dallas, under the blazing lights of a packed stadium, a young, uncelebrated athlete named Jalen Wright steps into a world that doubts his very presence. Mocked by opponents and dismissed by the crowd, he's assigned to Lane 4, the lane no one pays attention to. But what follows is more than just a race. Lane 4 Legend is the gripping journey of a quiet force who turns mockery into momentum and doubt into destiny. With every stride, Jalen rewrites expectations, shatters barriers, and carves his name into history, not just with speed but with soul. This is not just a story about breaking a world record. It's about breaking silence, breaking stereotypes, and breaking through every invisible wall placed in his way. Get ready for a story of resilience, grace, and unstoppable determination. One that starts in the shadows and ends in legend. The sun over Dallas beat down like a challenge from the sky itself. Heat waves shimmered above the pavement outside the Texas State Athletics Arena, where a steady crowd of spectators shuffled through ticket lines, chattered beneath sun hats, and held up phones to document their day at the prestigious Lone Star Invitational. The city's pulse quickened with anticipation. It wasn't just another track meet. It was the kind of event where legends were born, where speed was currency and pride was on the line. Banners of local favorites fluttered in the wind. Vendors barked out deals on icy lemonade and foam fingers. The rhythmic bass of pre-game music pulsed through the air like a heartbeat. And then came the bus. Plain, white, unbranded. No crowd gathered for it. No reporters waited at its doors. It hissed to a stop in the shadow of the arena, and a single figure stepped off. Tall, lean, and quiet. Jalen Wright adjusted the straps on his worn duffel bag and took in the scene with calm eyes. No entourage followed him. No flashy warm-ups. Just a gray tank top, black shorts, and shoes that had clearly seen more than one season. To most in the crowd, he was invisible. Another name on the heat sheet. An afterthought. He made his way through the concrete halls of the stadium, passing clusters of athletes warming up, stretching, chatting, and comparing gear. Some paused to glance at him. Some didn't bother. "Who's that?" one athlete muttered, eyes narrowing. "Looks like someone's cousin came to spectate," another joked. Laughter rippled. Jalen didn't look back. He found his assigned locker in the far corner of the changing area. There was no nameplate, no welcoming staff. Just a number. He pulled out his uniform. Simple, navy blue with his name printed in small letters across the chest. Louisiana Tech. No sponsors. No hype. As he laced up his spikes, the sound of the stadium announcer echoed in the distance, calling names that stirred excitement in the crowd. Malik Thompson is back in town, folks. The pride of Dallas. The human flame. This is his track. Jalen listened quietly, rolling his neck, letting each vertebra crack into readiness. He was used to this. Being overlooked, underestimated again until the moment came to speak without speaking. The moment to run. He made his way to the practice track behind the arena where athletes were doing high knees, bounding drills, block starts. The sun bore down harder now, the air thick with sweat and the scent of ambition. A group of runners in designer kits paused as Jalen stepped into the warm-up lane. "Yo, look at lane 4, one said, smirking. "Where's the rest of his team?" "Probably still packing bags back home," another laughed. Jalen dropped into a lunge, ignoring them. One by one he loosened his body, arms swinging, legs coiled like springs. The more they talked, the more he heard the voice of his coach in his mind. "Let them talk. Your reply is written in seconds." and how you leave them behind. The call came through a megaphone. First heat of the men's 100. To the staging area. Jalen stood up and walked. Every step was measured. Every breath was deliberate. His name hadn't been called on the speakers, but he had shown up, fully, completely. And now the track waited for him. The staging area buzzed with energy. Athletes lined up in rows, stretching, pacing, waiting to be called onto the track. Officials with clipboards double-checked names and numbers, ticking boxes and giving brief nods. Water bottles clinked against benches. Spikes tapped impatiently on the concrete floor. Jalen stood quietly in his assigned row, his bib number pinned straight, his focus locked inward. He could feel the heat rising from the ground beneath him, a subtle hum of pressure that seemed to push everyone toward urgency. The stadium was just beyond the tunnel now, and with it, the roar of thousands. The announcer's voice boomed over the speakers, cheerful and booming like a television host. "All right, Dallas, get on your feet for the first men's 100-meter heat. This one features some real firepower." Names began to echo across the arena. Malik Thompson, of course, was mentioned first. The stadium responded in waves, cheers, whistles, chants of Blaze rolling across the stands like thunder. Malik jogged confidently toward the entryway, his red and gold kit practically glowing under the stadium lights. Behind him came others, regional champions, fast-talking favorites, athletes with nicknames and fan clubs. Each one had a reputation, a resume, a highlight reel. Then came the final name. And in lane 4 from Louisiana Tech, Jalen Wright. Silence. A few scattered claps. A confused murmur from the commentators. One voice tried to save the moment. "Well, folks, not much is known about this young man, but hey, surprises come in all shapes." Jalen stepped into the light of the stadium. The track stretched before him like a challenge carved in red. 8 lanes. Wind flags barely fluttering. Spectators leaned forward in their seats. Some squinted at him, trying to place his face. Others laughed to themselves. Lane 4 they thought was filler. A name to be forgotten once the real race began. As he walked to his mark, he could hear fragments of conversation floating from the sidelines. Is he even seated? No way he makes it past this heat. He doesn't even have a sponsor. That's just sad. Jalen knelt at the block in lane 4. His fingers touched the textured surface of the track. Familiar, solid, honest. Here there were no voices, no opinions, just action. He closed his eyes. He pictured home. The old dirt field he used to train on. The makeshift weights in his uncle's garage. His coach pacing the sidelines with a stopwatch and a prayer. His mother watching from the porch, holding her breath every time he ran. He felt the weight of every doubt ever thrown at him, condensed into a tight knot inside his chest. And then he exhaled, letting it dissolve into something else. Fuel. The starter's voice cut through the stadium. "Runners, on your marks." Jalen rose into position, settling into the blocks like a blade into its sheath. The other runners shifted beside him. A few cast sideways glances. One snorted quietly. Set. A breath. A silence. And then the gun. They exploded off the line in unison. Muscle. Wind. Flame. The first few meters were chaos, feet pounding, arms pumping, the crowd screaming. But by the halfway mark it was clear. Lane 4 was not falling behind. Lane 4 was pulling away. Jalen's body moved like it was crafted for this moment. His strides were smooth, efficient, and terrifying. The noise of the crowd twisted into a stunned gasp as he surged past the favorites, leaving them clawing for a moment that had already slipped away. 10 meters left. His form never broke. His eyes never wavered. He crossed the line in silence. Then came the eruption. The scoreboard blinked once, then locked in. 9.55. World record. The stadium didn't know how to react. Cheers clashed with stunned disbelief. Coaches dropped clipboards. Commentators stammered into their microphones. Malik Thompson stared at the screen, mouth open, chest still heaving from the race he had not won. Jalen stood upright, breathing through his nose, calm as the crowd lost its mind around him. The cameras zoomed in. For the first time that day they searched for his name. Jalen Wright. Lane 4. No one spoke to him as he walked back down the track, spikes clicking against the surface. No jokes now. No laughter. Just eyes. What? Watching. Recalculating everything they thought they knew. He left the finish line the same way he arrived. Quiet. Focused. Unapologetically fast. The tunnel behind the finish line was long and cool, a narrow corridor of cement and steel. Every footstep echoed, rhythmic and solitary. Jalen walked slowly, the heat of the race still radiating off his skin, but his mind untouched by the noise behind him. He could still hear it, though, dimmed by walls but unmistakable. The crowd, stunned into clamor. Coaches barking into headsets. Announcers scrambling for facts. Someone yelling for a replay. Others chanting a name they had never spoken until 3 minutes ago. Jalen Wright. The tunnel swallowed those sounds, muffling the chaos like a curtain drawn between two worlds. Here there were no cameras. No whispers. Just breath, sweat, and concrete. He passed an assistant with a clipboard, standing off to the side. "Media room's down that way," she mumbled, pointing with her pen. "They're asking for you." Jalen nodded but did not change direction. He kept walking past the media corridor and toward the athlete-only zone. He wasn't here for interviews. Not yet. Not until he was done with the job he came to do. The warm-up area had thinned out. Most athletes were now in the stands or preparing for their own heats. But a few lingered, stretching in silence or scrolling through phones. When Jalen walked in, the room shifted. No one spoke. A few glanced up. One of the earlier mockers, a tall sprinter with platinum-dyed hair, quickly looked away, pretending to be engrossed in his laces. Jalen ignored them. He made his way to the stretching mat and sat cross-legged, drawing in air through his nose, holding it, then letting it go slowly. His heart rate slowed. His thoughts sharpened. His coach wasn't there. Not physically. But Jalen could hear his voice anyway, clear as if he had spoken in the next breath. "You're not finished. One race does not make a legacy. Stay sharp. Finals are coming." He lay back on the mat, letting his arms spread wide, eyes fixed on the ceiling's metal beams. His muscles buzzed, not from fatigue but from potential. He had more in the tank. More to show. He could feel it. A few minutes later, a track official appeared at the doorway. Her voice was clipped but respectful now. "Mr. Wright? They'd like you to step into the lounge. Drug testing and press will follow." He rose without a word. The Mr. caught his ear. No one had called him that earlier. Before the record, he was just Lane 4. Now they attached titles. He followed her through a series of doors, arriving at a sleek room filled with bottled water, cooling towels, and 3 people in headsets coordinating interviews. One of them, a man in a navy suit and shiny shoes, stepped forward. "Jalen, incredible performance," he said, his smile a polished display. "We've got every major outlet requesting a few minutes. ESPN, Sportsnet, even a late request from Eurotrack. Just a quick rotation. Do you have a minute?" Jalen looked at him. Then he looked at the screen in the corner where his heat was being replayed on loop. The slow motion showed him at the 50-meter mark, gliding with effortless precision. His name appeared in bold beneath the image. Wright J. 9.55 seconds. "I'll speak after the finals," he said. The man blinked. Of course. We'll hold them." Jalen nodded and turned away. He left the room before any more questions could come. In the hallway, he passed 2 athletes on their way to the warm-up track. They moved aside without a word, giving him space. The same 2 who had laughed at him earlier. He didn't acknowledge them. He didn't need to. Respect, he knew, didn't come from confrontation. It came from proof. And he had delivered it in strides. Back in the locker room, he sat on the bench and untied his spikes. He inspected them carefully. Every lace, every worn edge, every faded stripe. No fancy branding. No gimmicks. Just tools of his trade. Tools that had just written history. The door creaked open and a familiar voice entered. "Knew you were gonna do something crazy today." Jalen looked up. Malik Thompson stood there, holding a towel draped over his shoulder. Gone was the cocky grin. In its place, a measured expression. Not friendly, but not hostile either. "I'll be in the finals too," Malik said. "This ain't over." Jalen stood and met his eyes. "I know." There was a pause, just long enough to acknowledge what had happened between them. The past. The future. The space they now shared at the top of the sport. Then Malik gave a single nod and left. Jalen returned to the bench, took another sip of water, and reached for his headphones. Gospel again. The same track he had listened to before the race. Because no matter what changed around him, he wouldn't. The final was coming. And Lane 4 was waiting. Afternoon sun slanted through the high windows of the arena's upper concourse, casting long golden bars across the floor. Outside, the heat still clung to the concrete like steam, but inside, the arena buzzed with a different kind of fire. Jalen sat alone in the athletes' lounge, staring at the floor-to-ceiling window overlooking the practice field. The world outside felt quieter now, like it had inhaled and was waiting to exhale. He was still riding the calm between races, that strange middle space where time slowed, the body buzzed with adrenaline's echo, and the mind drifted somewhere between reflection and readiness. A television in the corner played highlight reels from earlier heats. Analysts replayed his run again and again. The commentators were still catching up to the idea of him. One said, "We didn't even have footage of this guy in our preview package. He came out of nowhere." Another replied, "Not nowhere. Louisiana Tech. That school's been grinding for years. But this is next level." They talked about his technique, his acceleration, his form. One even speculated that the track surface had been engineered to run faster. Anything to explain what they'd just witnessed. Jalen tuned it out. He didn't need explanations. He needed breath, balance, stillness before the storm. From the hallway came footsteps, fast clipped. A voice called his name. This time with clarity. Not a question. A fact. Jalen Wright. He turned. A woman approached, wearing an official event badge and a nervous smile. "Sorry to interrupt," she said. "There's someone here to see you. She's not on the list, but she said she raised you." Jalen stood up so fast the chair scraped the floor. He didn't wait for more details. He found her waiting near the restricted entrance, standing like a statue in her Sunday best, even though it was Saturday and the heat outside could melt patience off the skin. "Mama," he said. His mother turned, her face cracking into a grin that held back tears with the strength of years. "Lord, you done turned my heart upside down today," she whispered. They hugged. She held on like she was making sure he was real. Like the boy she used to chase through church parking lots hadn't just shattered a world record on national television. "How'd you get here so fast?" he asked. "Called in a favor," she said. "Your uncle drove me 3 hours like he was training for a race himself." Jalen chuckled. He hadn't smiled much today, not really. But this brought something out of him that even the race hadn't touched. "You always said I was fast," he said softly. "I said you had wings, baby," she replied. "Now the world knows it too." They sat together for a while in a quiet corner. She held his hand the way she used to after track meets back home, before college, before pressure, before all this. "Don't let this place change you," she said. "It won't," he answered. She looked at him hard. "I mean it. The fame. The interviews. The people who couldn't say your name this morning but are shouting it now. You still got to run like nobody's watching." He nodded, eyes serious again. "I ain't chasing crowds, Mama. I'm chasing time." She smiled. "Then go catch it. Like you always have." A few moments later, a staff member approached to let him know the finals were in 45 minutes. Jalen stood. His mother squeezed his hand once more. "I'll be in the front row," she said. He gave her one last look before disappearing down the tunnel. Back in the locker room, everything was quieter now. The other finalists had scattered to their own spaces, focused and distant. No more small talk. No more posturing. Only the track remained. He changed into a fresh uniform. Same colors. Same shoes. Same soul. As he stood in front of the mirror, the moment finally settled on his shoulders. The finals. The world was watching now, waiting to see if his first run was a fluke or the arrival of something new. Some wanted him to prove it. Some wanted him to fall. But Jalen didn't care. He didn't carry the weight of their hopes or their doubts. He carried the name his mother gave him. The strength of every overlooked runner. Every hometown underdog. Every coach who saw something others ignored. He carried his own belief. As he stepped into the tunnel for the final time that day, the overhead lights glared brighter. The roar of the crowd had returned, louder than ever, chanting names, stomping feet, shaking the stadium in waves. But in his mind, everything was still. The weight of a name had never felt so light. The Dallas arena was at full capacity now, a living, breathing organism of sound and heat. Spectators packed every row, standing, waving, screaming as if their voices could sway the wind. Cell phones were raised like torches, capturing history in shaky frames. On the jumbo screen above the field, the camera panned across the finalists walking toward the starting line. Each name flashed across the bottom of the screen with fanfare. Photos, stats, sound bites. Malik Thompson, introduced first, received a thunderstorm of applause. The hometown favorite. He lifted his arms to the crowd, feeding off their love. Then came the others. Sprinters from California, Georgia, Florida, even a national record holder from Jamaica who'd just flown in the day before. And then came Lane 4. The screen paused on Jalen Wright. No photo from past meets. Just a still from earlier that day, him crossing the line, face focused, eyes ahead, with the numbers 9.55 glowing behind him. The announcer's voice rang out. In lane 4, the man who stunned the world this morning and set a new 100-meter world record, from Louisiana Tech. Jalen Wright. There was a beat of silence. Then came the noise. It was not quite cheering. Not quite confusion. But something new. A crowd shifting its tone in real time. A city trying to understand how a stranger had become the main event. Jalen stepped to the line without any theatrics. No hand waves. No chest beating. He just walked. Focused. Malik glanced over at him from lane 5. This time he didn't smirk. He just gave a small nod, the kind men give when they understand what's about to happen is real. The athletes lined up. The stadium dimmed slightly as the spotlight fixed on the starting blocks. Everything fell into hush. Even the flag stopped moving. The starter called out, "Gentlemen, on your marks." Jalen lowered himself into the blocks. The track was warm beneath his hands. Familiar. Ready. Set. He rose. The world narrowed into silence. Then the gun. The explosion of muscle and lightning shot down the lanes. The first 20 meters were chaos. Speed everywhere. No margin for error. No time to think. At 30 meters, Malik surged ahead by a step. The Jamaican runner held strong on the outside. Cameras struggled to keep up, their frames blurring with motion. But at 40 meters, Jalen began to climb. It didn't look forced. It didn't even look fast. It looked inevitable. His arms moved like pistons. His knees rose with perfect height. His face remained calm, jaw set, eyes locked forward. The crowd began to rise with him, realizing they were not watching a fluke. They were watching flight. 50 meters. Then 60. Malik glanced sideways and saw it, a blur in lane 4. By 70 meters, Jalen had pulled even. At 80 he passed them all. Not with a burst. With control. As if he had measured every step down to the breath. By 90 meters he was clear. He crossed the line alone. The time appeared on the scoreboard a second later. 9.48. Another world record. Broken again. This time no one said a word. Not at first. The crowd stood still, eyes wide, jaws slack. Then, like a wave crashing over the stunned silence, the noise returned. It started with gasps. Then cheers. Then roars. The stadium had just witnessed something they had no words for. Jalen bent slightly, hands on his knees, breathing deep. Not gasping. Not struggling. Just absorbing. Behind him, Malik crossed the line second, shaking his head in disbelief. He smiled, not out of mockery but something closer to respect. Maybe even admiration. Officials scrambled. Reporters flooded the edge of the track. Cameras pointed like spotlights trying to capture proof of the impossible. Jalen didn't raise his arms. He didn't jump or scream. He walked slowly to the finish banner, unrolling it with steady hands as the crowd shouted his name now with full force. Jalen. 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 His name filled the space like it had always belonged there. From the corner of his eye, he saw a hand rise above the crowd in the front row. His mother. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. Her eyes said everything. He nodded once toward her, subtle and proud. For a brief moment, everything else faded. The lights. The noise. The history books being rewritten in real time. Because this wasn't just about speed. It was about walking into a place where no one knew your name, and leaving it written in gold. The night fell over Dallas like a velvet curtain, cooling the heat that had scorched the track all day. Outside the arena, the sky turned a rich shade of blue, city lights flickering like applause that refused to end. But inside, the energy refused to die down. Jalen sat alone in the medical bay, his feet soaking in ice, headphones resting on his collarbone. The music had stopped. He wasn't listening to anything now. Just silence. His spike sat beside him on the floor, untied, dusted with the red tint of the track's surface. He could feel the vibration of the arena through the bench, a low hum of celebration, interviews, and flashbulbs. His name now traveled from mouth to mouth like a chant. A gospel. A headline. He had done it again. But the question no one asked, the one he felt in his chest, was what now? The door opened. His coach stepped in. Coach Dunn. Bald, broad-shouldered, never one for wasted words. His expression was unreadable, but his eyes gleamed. "You sit still too long, they're gonna start chiseling statues," he said. Jalen looked up. "Thought you'd be with the press. They want quotes." "I want truth," Coach Dunn replied, pulling up a chair. "You ready for what comes next?" Jalen didn't answer immediately. His fingers traced the edge of a towel on his lap, still damp from the race. "I don't know," he said. "Feels like the world just flipped." His coach leaned forward. That's because it did. You flipped it. But now comes the part no one tells you about. After the race, after the gold, you're not just running anymore. You're carrying it. Jalen looked at him. Carrying what? Coach Dunn paused before answering. Everything. Your name. Your story. Every kid who looks like you. Every athlete they doubted. Every dream they laughed at. You carry that now. Whether you want to or not. The words didn't land like pressure. They landed like truth. Heavy. But right. I didn't run for all that, Jalen said quietly. I know. You ran for yourself. But now, it's bigger. Outside the room, the noise swelled again. Another round of applause as the medal ceremony wrapped. Reporters rushed to file their stories. Someone yelled for a camera crew. Coach Dunn stood. You've earned your silence tonight. But tomorrow they'll be waiting. Every camera. Every mic. Every hand trying to shape your story into what sells. Jalen nodded. I'll speak, he said. But I'll do it my way. His coach smiled. Good. Before he left, Coach Dunn turned and added, and Jay? You didn't just break a record out there. Jalen looked at him, curious. You broke through, the coach said. After the door closed, Jalen sat still for a long time. Eventually he stood and walked barefoot to the window. The skyline of Dallas stretched before him, tall and glowing. Somewhere beyond those lights, his mother was waiting, probably still clutching her purse like she had in the front row, eyes wet, pride spilling over. And beyond her, newsrooms were lighting up, preparing headlines. Jalen Wright, the meteor in lane 4. From unknown to unforgettable. New era begins with 9.48. But none of them knew the real story. The early mornings. The bruised knees. The rejection letters. The workouts in borrowed shoes. The voice of a mother in the kitchen telling him, you got something the world ain't ready for. And maybe the world wasn't ready. But it had seen it now. He turned away from the window, walked back to the bench and slowly pulled on his warm-up hoodie. His body ached. Not from pain, but from purpose. Tomorrow would be the beginning of a different race. One with new lanes. New obstacles. But Jalen was ready. Because now, when he walked into a room, no one would ask what lane he was in. They'd know. 1 week later, the world was still spinning around his name. The footage had gone viral across every platform, sliced into slow-motion clips and highlight reels. Commentators called him the ghost of the finish line and the quiet storm. Sports networks ran specials titled The Right Stuff and the Lane 4 Phenomenon. His name trended for 5 straight days. Every sportswear brand reached out. Shoe deals, endorsements, magazine covers, Olympic sponsors. But Jalen stayed quiet. He returned to Louisiana Tech like he'd promised, slipping into his training schedule with the same rhythm as before. Same track, same morning dew, same hunger. He avoided interviews, skipped red carpets, and politely turned down the talk shows. He knew the story the world wanted. They wanted him to be loud, to lean into fame like it was a prize. But that had never been his goal. He wasn't chasing celebrity. He was chasing legacy. At the local high school in Shreveport, the track team held a small ceremony in his honor. They named a section of bleachers after him. The Right Wall. Kids climbed on top and posed for pictures with posters of his world record time. On the track, young sprinters tried to mimic his form, his posture, the way he lifted off the blocks like gravity didn't apply. One kid, no more than 9, told a reporter, I want to be lane 4. Not, I want to be Jalen Wright. Just lane 4. That lane, once dismissed as an unlucky spot, now held power. Because he had made it his own. Back in Dallas, the stadium began discussing a permanent installation, a bronze plaque beside the track to honor what had happened. It would simply read, Lane 4, April 9th, 9.48. Tourists and fans began showing up just to stand on that spot. But Jalen? He kept running. Each morning was a continuation, not a victory lap. He ran hills until his calves screamed. He practiced starts until the sun disappeared behind the trees. His coach said, you've already proven everything. But Jalen disagreed. There's more. He wasn't chasing another world record. Not yet. He was chasing silence. The kind of quiet that came with understanding why he'd been put on this path in the first place. It wasn't just speed. It was reminder. A reminder that greatness doesn't always come from where people expect. Sometimes it shows up uninvited. Sometimes it walks into the arena through a side door, wearing no endorsements, no fanfare, and leaves with the crowd on its feet. Weeks later, a journalist asked him in a rare interview, what do you want people to remember most about your race in Dallas? Jalen paused, thought, then said calmly, I want them to remember that I didn't run to prove them wrong. I ran to prove me right. That quote was printed on t-shirts, murals, graffiti walls in cities far from Louisiana. And still Jalen kept running. Until one morning, long after the spotlight dimmed and the world turned its attention elsewhere, a young runner approached him at the track. He was skinny, nervous, clutching a pair of worn-out cleats. "Coach said you might help me with my starts," the boy said. Jalen nodded. "Let's work," he replied. He lined up next to the boy, dropped into the blocks and said, "We go on my count." The boy nodded. They set. Jalen said, "Ready, set, go." And they ran, side by side. Not for time, not for cameras, just for the feeling, just for the love of the lane. And somewhere in the hum of wind and rubber and breath, a legend stretched its legs once more, silent, steady, and still running towards something greater. The end. 7 moral lessons from Lane 4 legend. 1. Never let others define your worth. When Jalen walked into the arena in Dallas, the world saw him as a no-name competitor. He wasn't on the pre-race promotional posters. He wasn't in the commentators' notes. He wasn't expected to win. In fact, he was mocked, laughed at, treated as though his presence on the track was a mistake. But he didn't internalize their disrespect. He didn't try to talk louder or puff his chest to be seen. He let his preparation and his performance speak. The first lesson is this: people will always try to put you in a box that makes them comfortable. It is not your job to fit inside it. It's your job to break out of it. Don't let labels, judgments, or stereotypes define what you're capable of. Know your value even when others don't. 2. Silence can be stronger than noise. Jalen didn't bark back when the crowd laughed. He didn't respond to the opponent's taunts or try to match the energy of those doubting him. He stayed quiet, focused, letting his presence build its own gravity. In a world that often mistakes loudness for power, Jalen proved that stillness has its own strength. Sometimes silence is the loudest thing in the room. Sometimes composure can shake a stadium more than shouting ever could. There's power in not reacting, because when you don't rise to every insult, you rise above them. 3. Talent may open the door, but discipline walks you through it. Speed wasn't enough to break a world record. What separated Jalen from the rest was discipline. His background, running in quiet corners, training away from the spotlight, wasn't glamorous, but it was relentless. Every morning he showed up. Every rep, every stride, he sharpened his edge. This story reminds us that natural ability means very little if you don't do the work. Dreams are loud, but the grind? That's quiet. It's not enough to want the moment, you have to earn it when no one is watching. 4. Representation matters. Jalen's win wasn't just about a stopwatch. It was about visibility. A young, black athlete from a lesser-known school. No big sponsorships. No history of media coverage. And yet, he redefined what the world thought greatness looked like. When he crossed that finish line, he wasn't just running for himself. He was showing every overlooked, underestimated young athlete what was possible. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do isn't just succeed, it's succeed as yourself. Authenticity is its own victory. And for someone else watching, it might be the spark that lights their path. 5. The real race begins after you win. Many stories end with the victory. But Lane 4 legend shows that winning is only the beginning. Jalen had to navigate the noise of fame, media frenzy, and the pressure to become someone he wasn't. That pressure can crush people. But he stayed rooted. He returned home. He trained the same way. He listened to the same voice inside that guided him when no one knew his name. Success doesn't define you, how you handle success does. It's one thing to reach greatness. It's another thing to carry it with grace. Because what you do after the win says more about you than the win itself. 6. Legacy is bigger than trophies. In the end, what made Jalen a legend wasn't just his speed. It was what he left behind. He inspired a generation. He turned a random lane into sacred ground. He showed a young kid that it was okay to dream big in a small town. True legacy isn't about headlines or highlight reels. It's about impact. It's about who you lift up, not just how high you climb. Trophies gather dust, but inspiration moves through time. 7. Run your race no matter the lane. Lane 4 had no magic. It wasn't the center of attention. It was just a lane. But Jalen made it matter. He didn't ask for a spotlight. He brought his light with him. Wherever you are in life, maybe you weren't given the best seat at the table. Maybe you weren't born with connections. Maybe people don't expect much from you. That's okay. Run your race, your path, your way. Because what matters isn't where you start. It's how you finish. These 7 lessons are more than just reflections from a story. They are guideposts for anyone facing doubt, anyone chasing purpose, anyone daring to believe that greatness can rise from unexpected places. Lane 4 Legend is not just a story about speed. It's a story about spirit. And the reminder that sometimes, the legend doesn't follow the lane. The legend makes it. Thank you for watching and listening to Lane 4 Legend. This story was created to remind us all that greatness doesn't need permission. It just needs belief, discipline, and the courage to keep going, even when no one's cheering. If this story moved you, inspired you, or gave you something to think about, do us a favor. Give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel for more motivational stories just like this. Every voice matters. So drop a comment below. Let us know what lesson stuck with you the most, or tell us about your own Lane 4 moment. We'd love to hear your story too. And if you're looking for more inspiration, don't stop here. Check out the other videos on the channel. There's so much more waiting to be heard. Until next time, keep showing up, keep running your race. And remember, even the quietest runner can become a legend.